Whether you're a donor, a volunteer, a community partner, we're happy to have you here this morning. Like I said, our largest attendance yet, so it's great to see that you guys are all interested in hearing more about our work. So today we're going to be talking about pillars generally, from access to aftercare, and we'll be hearing from Kim Juvie. She is our housing services advocate. When you call Pillars main phone line, Kim's the first person that you talk to, and she is able to handle almost any caller that comes in. I was just looking at some stats, and 74% of calls that she handles are resolved with her. So she doesn't have to bounce callers around and relive some of that trauma, but she'll go into some of that more in her section. Lauren Moan is one of our crisis housing managers. She's going to be talking about shelter specifically. And then Paige Johnson is our program manager. She oversees all of our case managers here at Pillars, so she'll be talking about some of those supportive services. I do like to start some of these conversations out by looking at our continuum of care. I think it's a great way to get a visual of all the different programs. When we start talking about it, it can get kind of jumbled up and kind of confusing a little bit. So certainly this is a visualization, but clients come in at any of these different points and their journeys are not linear. So oftentimes they do bounce between different programs, and it's certainly not always that a client starts on the left and works through Pillars linearly. So we have a lot going on. We have our prevention program, street outreach. We have our adult shelter. That's kind of paired with our resource center. They go hand in hand. And then our adult and family shelter. We have some of our housing here. So we have supportive housing, Ascend, which is a program for young adults with mental health challenges, stable housing, and some market rate housing. So we'll go a little bit more into that later, but again, just to kind of get the visual of Pillars' scope of work. And I'm actually going to stop sharing here. And we will jump over to Kim, and she's going to talk a little bit about her role and how to access Pillars services.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. I am Kim. I'm the services advocate here. I've been doing this position. It was created about a year and a half ago. And one of the main things that I do is I do take all the incoming calls here at Pillars. And as a services advocate, I like to kind of say that I see the clients maybe a little bit more than others, and that C is spelled with a C-E-E. I coach them, I encourage them, and I empower them to take control of their situation that they're going through. A lot of times when they're calling in, they're in crisis, and they need de-escalation from whatever situation they might be going through. Sometimes they just need someone to listen to them and just walk them through the steps that they need to go through. My job is to ask them the questions, the hard questions. Where are you staying? Do you have a safe place to go? If they're being evicted, how long do you have in your apartment to stay there? Do you have children? Do you have money to go to a hotel? Are you working? Are you on disability? Just trying to find out and get to the core of what their situation is, and then help them to navigate not only Pillars, but community resources. I get to conduct the initial conversations and identify what their barriers are and identify if we can help them here at Pillars. I direct them to either the shelters, giving them the information that if they need shelter, where to go, whether it's the resource center where they can check in there. And all of our shelters do require that you have to present in person to actually get on the waiting list. And our shelters do have a waiting list, unfortunately. There's a huge need, and there's a lot of people that are losing their housing right now. So we encourage them to get on that waiting list for shelter, either at the resource center or at either of the two shelters, the adult shelter or the adult and family shelter. Once they've done that, if they can access a lot of information for the community of resources, whether it's house care, food, clothing, any job needs that they might need. They can access a lot of those things right at the resource center. Or I send out packets of information to them, letting them know, giving them the information for the community, as well as applications to low-income housing, other information as to where to look for housing, look for jobs, things like that. Depending upon what their barriers are, if they are being evicted from their apartment, whether it's a non-lease renewal or anything from 5 to 45 days, we can enroll them in a diversion and prevention program, and hopefully diverting them from going into shelter itself, but getting them that case management that they need to assist them in looking for housing, especially if they have barriers as far as evictions or felonies, or if they're a registered sex offender. Some of those bad credit, those barriers are a lot higher for clients in being able to find housing. So we try and get them directed to those programs. A lot of what I'll do is connect them to community resources. Pillars can only do so much for our clients, and we do rely heavily on our community and partnering with them to help the clients through the crisis that they're going through. So giving them the resources that they need to feel empowered and know what the next steps that they can do on their own, as well as what we can do for them. Anything else, Matt?
Yeah, Kim, could you talk a little bit about the waiting list? And we're not able to accommodate everybody's needs in the community. So
Right.
as people call and are seeking shelter, and you've identified that that is indeed what they need, that there's no other self-resolutions, nowhere else for them to stay. Can you talk about how to get on the waiting list and what you have to do to maintain that?
Sure. So they can go to either the resource center on Mason Street or one of the shelters to present in person. They actually, when they get on that waiting list, they have to present in person. We have to know that they're in the community to be able to get on that waiting list, so that when a spot opens up for them, that they are able to access that right away. So they are required to present in person. Once they're on that waiting list, they can then are allowed to call in every day and check in, so that we know that they still need a place to stay. If they are actually staying outside or in their cars, in a hotel, we direct them to the outreach team, which is Ben and Emily, and hopefully connect them together, where they can start getting case management with them while they're on the streets, and get them other resources that Ben and Emily might have for them as well. Trying to make sure that they're at least staying in a safe place, being able to check on them daily, make sure that they're get some of their needs taken care of while they are staying outside. Usually, if they're in a situation where they might have a 5-day notice or a 14-day notice, but they have a place to stay right now, it's about, I think it's a 2 weeks before you're going to lose your housing that you can get on that waiting list. Is that right, Lauren? Give them about that 2-week time. Yeah. Because the waiting list can be sometimes anywhere from a few days to a month to get into shelter. It just depends upon what that turnover looks like. We try and do it at the closer end of a few days, but with the amount of people that we have needing shelter right now, it sometimes can take a little bit longer, especially if they're families that are needing shelter. Those spots are very precious because we don't have the capacity to hold everyone that is in need right now.
And then one last thing too, some of our housing programs, actually many of them rely on our coordinated entry system. And I shouldn't say our coordinated entry system because we don't run it. But Kim, could you touch a little bit about who oversees that, what it is and how we use that?
So the coordinated entry system is really run by the county, but it can be accessed through the case managers. They have to take like what's called a VI-SPDAT assessment to get on that waiting list. And it's a prioritization list. So like with diversion and prevention, they do a phone assessment with the clients. And once that assessment is done, they go on a prioritization waiting list, which is that prioritization that prioritizes those that are in the most need. So if someone is going to be losing their housing in 30 days, but they have 30 days to stay in that apartment, and then I have someone that calls and does an assessment a few days later, but they only have 5 days left in their apartment. If that person with the 5 days would then go ahead of the person with the 30 days because they are in more need right immediately than what that other person is. So it's not a first come, first serve. It's a needs based with the programming, and that is with all the other housing programs as well with the VI-SPDAT. They all do that prioritization as that needs based. Those at most risk of homelessness, those that are in most dangerous situations, things like that, that they take into consideration to see who needs that housing the most. And then once they're on that waiting list, as a program has space open up for case management, they then get pulled from those lists and enrolled in those programs to get that case management and work on the housing that they need. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that was great. And a lot of our programs that we run have very specific requirements to be able to for eligibility in those programs. So again, the coordinated entry system helps us determine whether or not somebody would be eligible and pair people appropriately with the program. So we were going to skip over to Lauren and talk about shelter, but Paige, I know you might have somewhere to be in a little bit, so we're actually going to jump over and we're going to talk with Paige about some of our supportive services, maybe hear a little bit about her new role and case management. So I'll go ahead and share your slides. Paige, just let me know when you're ready for me to switch them.
Okay. All right, so hi everyone, I'm Paige Johnson. I'm the new program manager. This is a newly created position. It's just, it was seen as a gap. It's allowing our supervisor, my supervisor is typically Tara Prawl, she'll always be mine. And then I'll be taking over the case managers throughout the 4 sites. So I'm just gonna be really helping them engage more and more with their clients and providing just, the best services that we can on a case management standpoint. This first slide is talking about our roles as case managers. So it's not looking at it as just like day-to-day tasks, but like what we are to our clients and what we are as community members. So, from the top left corner, we're looking at appreciator. This is going through life with our clients. It's looking at them and seeing them where they've come from, where they're at now, and where they want to be, and always celebrating those small victories, those medium-sized victories, and those large. We're definitely advocates. We'll do that, through means of helping our clients get medical attention, the drug and alcohol counseling needed between landlords and other neighbors. We're always pushing because those are the voices that need to be heard, and that we help provide that for them. Definitely big supporters. We do this on just our day-to-day contact with them. There's always challenges, and we're always there. Some of our clients don't have family, really healthy supports through friendships. So we definitely provide that with them. We were connecting them with resources. We're connecting with medical, physical, social security, other community resources. We're doing that on the daily. And then coaching. We're helping them learn some of the skill sets that are sometimes new, depending on especially our younger clients, helping them hone in back on those skill sets. Some of our clients have not really had a stable house or rented for years. So it's walking them through all of those steps that I think sometimes as experience homelessness, we kind of forget all that. And then just kind of coaching them through situations. They struggle with deaths in the family. Sometimes, they're in recovery, and then they really work through all of this stuff, and just using a lot of motivational interviewing and just being really good active listeners is how our roles kind of all help assist our clients even more. You want to go to the next one, Matt? All right. So in case manager role, as Matt had shown in his first slides, Pillars has a plethora of services that we provide, and case management can be seen at every step. So like Kim had explained too, we have the prevention and diversion program. That's 2 case managers. That'll be Shelby and then Sarah a little bit now, but she'll be transitioning to her new position at Ascend. So we're looking for that. Their purpose, again, is to avoid shelter entry through creative solutions and case management. So this is sometimes just providing financial assistance, the security deposit, first month's rent. This is sending out housing packets, applications, working with landlords. Sometimes it's even having a conversation with a long lost aunt and uncle that they're like, hey, can you house these people for a couple of weeks until we can get something situated? And I've seen it done, and it's really impressive. Currently, their caseloads are running between 60 to 65 households. So that can vary from single individuals all the way to large families. So the second step is outreach. So again, those are people getting connected they're connecting with people who live out in places not meant for human habitation, cars, out on the streets, the ramps. And they're helping them get to housing stabilization through resources, including, helping them get on the shelter wait list, and then kind of continuing on those services a little bit while they're in shelter. Their caseloads right now are looking at about 25 to 30 clients per person, which if you think about it, especially as it's street outreach, that's, about 50 to 60 people that are not in really good, safe environments and safe places to be sleeping and living. Then we'll go to the crisis housing. So that'll be in our shelter, and their purpose is to provide support. Oh, sorry, as I'm moving mine, because I'm looking at my slides too on my computer. To provide support to individuals and families currently residing at either Pillar shelter, and then helping them with ongoing housing solutions to build their self-sufficiency. They are amazing in getting them connected to landlords, working through, especially like, if we think of like our family and adult shelter, some of those individuals have never experienced homelessness to that extent. How do we get our kids to school? How do we look at childcare? How do we look for employment? It's more than just housing. It's everything that surrounds housing. Their caseloads are looking to be about 30 to 40 clients per case manager. Again, high numbers. And then kind of where my specialty lies in my realm is the housing case managers. So what we're doing is we provide case management and subsidized rent to households exiting homelessness in an effort to move them into more permanent housing, and then again, building self-sufficiency. Our goal with that, again, is to get our clients to a point where they're not using the subsidy, but then also connecting them to places that are like Appleton Housing Authority, Outagamie County, Winnebago, for those subsidies, because we all know it's been a challenge with the rent increases, that 30% is going to help out anybody. And so we just want to make sure that our clients, once they exit programming, are in a good spot that they can afford it for the long run. And then between all 4 case managers, currently we are looking at 75 households. So again, that can vary from individuals to large families. All right, if you want to do the next slide, thank you. Kim touched on coordinated entry. It's such a fun system that we all absolutely enjoy working through. It's an assessment that is looking at all of the barriers that our clients have experienced. You know, it can go anywhere from childhood traumas to drug and alcohol to mental health, domestic, and after all completed, it will give you a score. On this slide, it's looking at low barrier or mid-level and then highest of barriers. When it comes to the low barriers, they're usually shorter lengths of homelessness. So this may be their first experience of it, where the landlord increased the rent and they can't afford it. So now they end up in shelter, they're working diversion. The clients that we usually will push towards like our single room occupancy, which is nice, our on-site PHS or PSH, and then our veterans program. And then we also help them with the private search or private housing search as well. Our mid, that one's still shorter length, but they're showing a couple more barriers than the ones that are in the lower bracket. So it's like a number system. So in the lower bracket of that. So that one's going to be really focusing on like our tenant-based rental assistance program. Again, that is really just on the subsidy and then the intensive case management, but those people are not looking at some of the bigger challenges. So they're not experiencing homelessness for years. You know, again, it may be shorter stints of that where after about 2 years, we know that they can stabilize and then they can maintain that unit on their own. And then we have our highest barrier clients. So these are people where we look at it as a chronic status. When we say chronic, we mean people who are experiencing homelessness for 12 months out of a 3-year period. I walk outside today and I am freezing. There's not a chance that I could see myself living that way for an entire week, let alone for a year. So these are people that are experiencing a lot of mental health. So the drug and alcohol substance, physical health, evictions, criminal records, just all these things that landlords are really just declining, even wanting to rent to them. These individuals typically will go into like our permanent supportive housing program. So it takes a village, and then our 2 rapid rehousing programs, which is one through the Balance Estate, another big grant thing, and then EHH. Those 2 are time limited with 2 years, but those are extremely intensive case management. Weekly throughout all of them, really meeting our clients weekly, meeting where they're at. But those ones in the highest barriers take a little bit more connecting to community resources to really allow them to stabilize.
Paige, can you touch a little bit more on what WISPDAT is? Excuse me.
Oh, the hotel voucher?
No, the assessment to do the barriers, the VISDPAT.
Oh, the VISPDAT.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, yeah, no. We are all about acronyms here. So the VISPDAT is literally when, let's say they enter shelter for the first time or they're meeting out with Ben and Emily on outreach. It's a long questionnaire that they look at, again, what are some of the barriers that are causing our clients to experience homelessness? Have they been in a domestic abuse situation and now they're fleeing? Have they been in the foster care system in the past? It's literally looking at all the data points that say these trends right here have shown why people have ended up experiencing this. And then that's where we want to try to place them in the proper programs. That's what it's looking at. Like Kim had said too, you know, one day a person could be on the top of the coordinated entry list, and the next day we drop down by 3 because another 3 people came in and they actually have higher barriers than that. It's all about timing and program space. We do have caps and capacities on especially our programs. So sometimes we could enroll 15 people at one time and they could be in for 2 years. That means our programs are kind of locked up for those 2 years. Our biggest challenge right now as case managers when it comes to the housing aspect is having landlords accept our clients and wanting to work with our programs. Whether it be they're looking at our clients as high risk, which we acknowledge. I always say when I'm engaging is, you know, I could look really good on this application paper and I can burn down your unit. Now I haven't, and I'm not trying to, But that is, you know, just because I don't come in with a case manager or a subsidy doesn't mean that I'm not as much of a high risk as my clients. I'm just telling you forthright that this is what's going on. And then the other one is we're just kind of getting priced out. When we're looking at housing situations, we can only work within a certain bracket of rent. Right now, I think they're saying bedroom in Outagamie County is going at $728. When I'm looking through Craigslist or I'm looking through any other apartment websites, I'm seeing them coming in at 1,000. So they're not wanting to reduce their rent in order to accommodate to our needs that we need on that end. So, but yeah, so long story short, Vegas Badet pretty much gives you a score and it says here, this is a program that I think is going to best fit for you. And then we get connected with as case managers.
So a follow-up question to that page, is this an assessment that Pillars has created, or is it a county created? Are we able to share it with the community, or is this something limited to coordinated entry?
This is something limited to coordinated entry. This came at this is a requirement for all of our federal funded grants. So we have to follow this. This is where it kind of locks us up a little bit because there's pros and cons. One, it doesn't allow any type of organization to cherry pick because that way, you know, we are really serving the highest of needs, highest barrier clients. So that's kind of the nice thing. The negative is, again, that can continuously shift. And, you know, if clients aren't being completely on these assessments, their scores are going to differ. So it's a good, it's one that we have to follow according to HUD and balance of state standards. It's got its flaws and it's got its positives as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, that's my contact info. I still kind of crazy to look at because this is so new to me, but I'll take it. And then I guess I'll just touch on aftercare real quick, just in case I do miss it. So all of our grants have aftercare built into it. Provide up to 6 months of aftercare. Client exits program, yay, we did it. We're not going to them off and say, well, best of luck to you. It's saying, hey, we get another 6 months. It's not going to be as intensive, but if you got questions or you just need, you know, a bi-weekly check-in to make sure everything's going well, like we're here for you. And even after those 6 months, we'll still get phone calls and texts saying, hey, Paige, how's it going? Like, can you help me out with this? Absolutely. You know, and I feel like we always make those bonds and those connections with our clients. We're working with them on such a regular basis that I'm literally tell everybody, I see them more than I see my family. So, you know, we're definitely here to always support. I love our open door policy and I love managers, and now I get to lead them. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Paige.
Yeah, thank you.
And here we'll switch over to Lauren and we'll talk a little bit about shelter.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces, and thanks for taking the time to learn about us and Pillars and what we do, and hopefully we have some questions at the end that we can answer for you. So I am one of our 2 crisis housing managers for Pillars. That also just kind of changed late 2022. We were able to restructure, and then we created that program manager position that Paige does now. So that was a pretty cool change for both crisis housing and supportive services, kind of trying to blend those 2 teams together and really help our clients the best that we can. So, so the 2 sites that I oversee are the adult shelter and our resource center. Like Matt mentioned, they're pretty intertwined. Our 2 shelters provide services to the most vulnerable members in our community. Clients are provided with personal care items, showers, laundry, meals, and just overall basic needs. They're offered case management services that Paige just touched on. Between the 2 shelters, we're actually able to serve up to 140 people each night. Both shelters operate off of a separate waiting list due to our different eligibility criteria. Like Kim mentioned, this is a lot of duplication. Like Kim mentioned, to be added to the shelter wait list, we require that clients present in person so that we can assess that they're self-sufficient. So this would mean that, you know, they'd be able to feed themselves, toilet themselves, take their meds, and just essentially be completely self-sufficient to take care of themselves while once they're deemed eligible, they're added to the wait list, and then each day after that, they can call. Unfortunately, we operate off of a wait list 365 days a year, just with our people experiencing homelessness is definitely rising in the Fox cities. So I would also like to say that that's probably definitely one of our team's hardest part about their jobs is adding people to the wait list and, then telling them that unfortunately we do not have a spot for them immediately. But they do a great job at reassuring them and to, reassure them to keep checking in that eventually they will get in. Usually it does take a little bit longer for families to get in other than singles, just because we need bigger rooms, more beds. Some of our family sizes can be 6, 7, 8 people. So as you can imagine, that's a lot of rooms and a lot of beds to fill. So we also do triage off of that wait list. So we try to get in families with children or with widows first, and then obviously people that may be more vulnerable, try to get them in as soon as possible. So I want to just give a little overview of the 3 crisis housing sites. The Adult and Family Shelter is the site that I don't manage. That is managed by Christine McCain. She's our other crisis housing manager. They serve both single adults as well as families. They're located downtown, close to the post office at 400 North Division. Their capacity usually is about 87 people. Clients are required to be sober at this facility, so it is a safe living environment for everyone there, especially the children. Again, shelter, unfortunately, like I said, operates off of a wait list, so that's the first step to be getting into shelter. At this specific shelter, case management engagement is required. So some of the main things that case managers do, like Paige mentioned, are setting goals for housing, maintaining, obtaining income, working on, their physical, mental health, childcare plans, schooling, etc. As you can imagine, the list goes on and on. We just really try to meet clients where they're at and see what they need. So we don't necessarily have an average length of stay. We get that question a lot just because everyone enters at a different, in a different capacity with different needs. So some folks may need more time and have more barriers and may need a little bit more support than others. Our second crisis housing site is our Pillars Adult Shelter. This is an overnight shelter that serves 55 single individuals. We are located at 1928 West College Avenue. That's behind St. Vincent de Paul, kind of underneath that overpass down by Car City. So this used to be known as the Warming Shelter. Now it's called the Pillars Adult Shelter since we've merged. The hours of operation are from 4:30 p.m. to 8 a.m. That is Monday through Friday. And we actually are now open on the weekends, 24 hours, thankfully to a city grant that we received late in 2022. We've never primarily been open on the weekends at the adult shelter. And then I think it was kind of pretty obvious when the world shut down and COVID hit that we needed somewhere for our clients to go. So that's kind of when we started making that change. And then the city started funding it. So much.
I want to pause you right there, Lauren. We were open during the night over the weekends, but not during the day.
Yep. Sorry. Thanks for the clarification.
Yes.
Yeah. So 24 hours on the weekends only. Yeah.
And Lauren, can you also touch a little bit on the type of background clients can have while at the adult shelter versus the adult and family shelter, such as, registered sex offender, stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we serve everyone that's 18 and up. So if a 17-year-old presents or something, we try to expedite them to the adult and family shelter. Again, they're served as an individual, but they would be more safe in a capacity where it's a sober living facility. And then they do, the adult and family shelter has a pretty rigid criteria where they can't have any felonies in the last 5 years, like domestic violence, batteries, any violent offense, things like that. So at our shelter, we definitely have a different criteria. So we can serve all different types of folks with all different types of backgrounds. That doesn't exclude you from getting on the wait list and being served at the adult shelter. They can also be actively struggling with drugs and alcohol. Of course, they do have to be able to take care of themselves, and they cannot be unruly by any means. They have to be pretty calm, cool, collective, even though they're under the influence. But thankfully, we have peer support specialists and recovery coaches that, again, meet them where they're at and are able to address some of their recovery needs or mental health needs. So that's a really cool addition to our staff in the last few years is our recovery coaches and peer support specialists.
One final interjection, Lauren. Sorry, following up on some questions.
Sure.
Do you serve individuals with active warrants?
No, we do not. So that wait list, why the wait list process is so long and pretty rigid is we have a wait list form that we are able to ask, are you self-sufficient? do you have a probation officer, or do you have any outgoing warrants? So that's kind of like our tool to use to make sure that we're checking all of our bases before we enter somebody. We'd hate to get somebody in the shelter, stabilize them. Now they have an open warrant. Now it's like traumatizing to them that they have to leave, and now they're, you know, back on the streets possibly, and then have to get back on that wait list after they take care of their warrant. So no active warrants, and then they cannot be on probation outside of Outagamie, Calumet, or Northern Winnebago County. So those are a few. The warrant thing has always been in place, but we've definitely, with our rising numbers and our wait list just being out of control, we've definitely put in a few more strict criterias to make sure that we're serving the folks in our community first, if possible. Any other questions? No, okay. So back to shelter, we where was I here? They have 2 hot meals. It's kind of like a bunk bed setting in one large room, so it's both males and females. They are separated, but it is essentially one large room. At this shelter, it's a little bit different than the adult and family shelter. At that adult and family shelter, they are required to engage in case management. At our shelter, or excuse me, the adult shelter, they do not have to engage in case management. We only have 1 case manager for 55 people, and I think his caseload's about 40 right now. So a normal caseload would be probably like 20 to 25. So he's definitely at maximum capacity. So the other kind of 15 folks, you know, probably 20 to 25 that are those in and out type of bounce back and forth type of people, they can choose to self-resolve. That doesn't mean that they're not getting any help. That just means that they're in the driver's seat and they have somebody in the passenger seat hovering over that student driver emergency brake if a staff member needs to hit it. So that's kind of how we look at it, is that they're leading the charge, and then they can choose, you know, if they want to engage or not, and kind of decide how much they want to engage. So a lot of that work, just due to the adult shelter hours being open at 4:30, a lot of that groundwork is done at the Resource Center, which is our 3rd crisis housing site. So our Pillars Resource Center is inside St. Matthew's Church. It's located at 129 South Mason Street. This was a program that just opened in the last 4 years, right when we merged. It opened pretty much right before we merged as an extension of one of our shelters, and now it's grown. It's kind of ebbed and flowed in the last few years. Just with COVID, we ended up shutting down for a bit, lost many of our resources, but now thankfully the community is stepping up big time, and our schedule is filling back up with resources. So a lot of those people that are at the adult shelter, because it closes at 8 a.m., transfer over to the Pillars Resource Center because they're open at 8:30. And then they're open until 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. So then when it kind of closes at 4 p.m., then they're kind of transferring back over to the adult shelter. So this is where, you know, it provides a welcoming environment for people, people experiencing homelessness specifically. So it really meets them where they're at. It connects them to whatever they need. For some people, it's a safe place of respite. So about 50% of the people that go there are from the adult shelter. About 30% are our outreach clients. So that those are people sleeping in places not meant for human habitation, outside, in a car, things like that. So for them, sometimes it's just a place for us, but it's just a place to grab a snack, grab a beef jerky, get a cup of coffee, and just kind of lay your head down for a couple minutes and to kind of just like regroup for a little bit. Obviously, we add people to the wait list there. And then we also, you know, it's kind of like a quasi library, especially with the library moved over by Home Depot on the east side of town. You know, we have partners like Partnership Health coming in, Goodwill, employment agencies. We have Kim every Thursday, which people love having Kim at the Resource Center. And then it's, you know, occupational health, Fox Valley Technical College, FSET, Riverview Gardens, just all the gamut of our amazing community partners. So like I said, that's kind of where that groundwork gets done for case plans, is really connecting people to like getting identification and getting connected to bus passes or FSET or employment. And then they kind of work their shelter plan as well at the Resource Center. There is about the last 10%, or excuse me, the last 20% of the folks that go there is about 10% of them are from the adult and family shelter. A lot less just because their facility is open all day. And then the other 10% are people that use it kind of like as an aftercare component. So people are housed and they kind of use it so that they don't isolate themselves in their homes, and they're coming and getting that social interaction and checking on their food share, and they have their leases up, so they're looking to get into a different place. So I really love that people use it as a safe place even after they're not in shelter. They really find like a home there and they feel safe there. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so you did touch a little bit on the aftercare section, and I do want to transition here. We only have about 15 minutes, so we'll go really quickly, but aftercare looks very different between every program, every site. In some situations we do follow up, in some situations we aren't. Can you touch on what aftercare looks like at the adult shelter or the resource center?
Sorry, Matt, you cut out just a little bit. I think I caught most of that. For aftercare, specifically for the outreach team, their grant that funds them lets them aftercare for 60 days, technically. So that means that they can go into people's homes and help them grocery shop or get them what they need, or just check in and make sure that everything is going okay. For the adult shelter, to be perfectly honest, very difficult to aftercare, just with Wayne's caseload being at 40. He barely has time to eat lunch some days. So he, by some way, shape, or form, he does provide a level of aftercare just with our super high risk, high vulnerable, high barrier clients. So there are a few people that come to mind right now on his caseload that have transitioned into shelter, or excuse me, out of shelter and into housing, and they do need that extra love, that extra help, that extra check-in. Hey, can you show me how to clean my apartment? Can you show me how to work my cell phone? Sometimes it's as simple as some life skills that somebody hasn't been housed in years, or they're isolated and they don't want to be alone, or they don't maybe have those soft skills or life skills that come so obviously to you or I. Sometimes that isn't what they grew up with. So a lot of soft skills, life skills are being taught too in that aftercare. We would love to have a full-time aftercare case manager one day. I think we have the capacity to fill a caseload just with aftercare. I think Paige touched on it a little bit in supportive services, just how they can work with them for 6 months. So like Matt mentioned, it's a little bit different pending program.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Then I want to jump over to Kim too. I know that you have a pretty sophisticated system for following up with some of those individuals, and it looks very different for you too, because you're interacting with a lot of individuals that are just starting their journey with Pillars, and trying to stabilize their housing situation. So I know it's difficult for you talking to these individuals at the very start and not necessarily knowing where they end up. So can you talk a little bit about your follow-up process?
Sure. So for me, keeping track of the people that are calling in after they've been given, a direction to go in, people to connect to. I try to be able to go back, a few weeks later to 30 days later, and give them a call and check back in with them and say, did you connected to this service? Is there anything else we can do for you? Do you have any other needs? Usually it's a quick 1-minute call, maybe 10 minutes, just to see how they're doing, making sure they got the services that they need, making sure that they didn't need anything else, and following up with them to see how things are going and see if there's anything else we can do for them. That's kind of where my aftercare stops.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So we are kind of coming down to the end here. I did just want to touch extremely quickly on some of our our housing that we have here, our affordable housing, and then we'll pop into questions. So this is a map of all of Pillar's properties. I think I have some buildings here. So in total, Pillars owns and operates 40 rental properties. 3 of those are owned by some of our partner agencies, and we manage those locations. In total, it comes to 136 units in town that we oversee, manage, and we use those for supportive housing paired with case management, stable and affordable housing, so where we're just charging 30% of their rent. And then we have a breakdown here of really what all of those units look like. So we're very fortunate and in a unique position to be able to see a client through that system and be able to house them as units become available. And some of the programs paired with these units, we work off the coordinated entry system as well. And this really provides a great opportunity for Pillars to be a friendly landlord. We can be more forgiving, more accommodating, things like waiving late fees and setting up payment plans. Obviously, we do still need to get paid, so we're very flexible with our payment plan, but we do expect clients to adhere to that once an agreement is met. And of all of our units, the majority of them actually have specific criteria associated with them, and only about 29 of them are flexible that we can rent out to anyone that we determine as being eligible for those. So that causes a little bit of difficulty on our end too, having those criteria associated. So different criteria could be that they're designated for a specific program or a specific population. So I just wanted to get that in front of you guys too, since we are talking about the full continuum. But I guess, you know, with our last couple minutes, I'd like to open it up and see if anybody has any questions. I've seen a couple pop up in the chat. So staff, if you want to chime in, or if the individuals are willing to unmute and ask it. Alana, I think you had one, so we'll pop right over to you.
I have a couple that I've been keeping track of from our chat. So the first one that caught my attention, and forgive me if I've missed something, everybody feel free to chime in. But does Pillars have any formal coordination between us and COTS?
Yeah, I actually sent him a direct message, but essentially COTS, Pillars work together. COTS is a transitional living program in our community. So COTS, again, has changed over the years. So they now require a 40-hour productivity requirement. So if someone's like severely disabled or something and can't either work 40 hours, volunteer 40 hours, or go to school, work on their mental health, whatever that all that entails, that 40 hours, then they may not be eligible. So it definitely has flip-flopped a little bit, and probably because they have probably so many people inquiring about housing just with our housing crisis everywhere. I'd say we probably send like 1 to 2 people a month from Pillars Adult Shelter to COTS. So our case managers have all the contacts at both the women's and the males COTS, and we constantly are collaborating with them, and they're a great resource for us.
I had another question in the chat asking for advice. If an individual presents at their church at night needing shelter or food, how can they support that individual? What types of resources can we direct them to?
Sure. I feel like that's a great question. I would say that obviously Pillars mention, if you don't have our card on hand, is always a great first step. So at night, there's, you could direct them to shelter. You never know if there's a spot open. At least you're directing them somewhere where someone can answer a few more questions for them rather than you kind of answering those questions. So I would say if you have anything, food or bag lunches or something to give them, absolutely give it to them, and then direct them towards Pillars. The 2 shelters are open overnight or at night, so either of them can be added to the wait list. They can get a sleep bag, they can get more food, and if they're extremely vulnerable or we're in cold weather policies, which is when degree is under 15, we allow people to stay in our lobby just for safety purposes. So that's an option.
And I'd certainly say too, that a great first step is always give us a call. Hopefully you can get a hold of somebody beforehand and find out what the situation is, and we can advise whether or not we do have space, or if we'd like to do an intake. And that can always be a great first step too. Great question.
Okay, so I see a couple more here. This might be for Paige. Can you tell us what type of training or educational requirements are for case managers so that they can carry out their roles?
Oh, try your possible applicant. Well, so we definitely look for. Our backgrounds all vary. I've got human services. We have some with history degrees, some with criminal justice. So it's more about what is that passion and that heart, and understanding the clients that we work with when we're looking at, potential hires for the case management role, because it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of motivational interviewing. That's a great background and, class to take, active listening. So in experience, I think, someone told me that you can get experience from anywhere. I was really a server for the first 10 years of my, adult life. And a lot of those skills were transferable. So it's looking more at how do we connect with our clients, and are we able to do that as an organization? And we've done an amazing job. Our clients feel very comfortable with us. They've indulged so many things that are so personal. And it's an amazing, rewarding job. I hope that answered it.
Just to clarify, do we have a minimum requirement of a bachelor's for the case manager role?
Yep. So for a crisis and for housing, you need a minimum of a bachelor's degree. Otherwise, we could look at possible associates, but you would need like 5 years or more of on or work experience in this field as well.
Okay. The next one might be for anybody who feels they can answer it. Are there any processes or resources in place for clients so that they have a sense of belonging within the community, either within or after shelter? I feel like the resource center plays a big role in this.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really trying to bring in, like I said, soft skills, meaningful activities, art therapy, service animals, occupational therapy, just really trying to sustain them so that they know what to do and know who to connect once they're out of shelter or out of our services. That's really the goal, is to make sure that they have those connections once they're in housing, and we can still help and we can still, be there to hold their hand a little bit, but we do definitely want to, push it on them and make sure they have their own bank account, and they have their transportation, and they know how to call to get bus passes. We don't want to do it all for them. It's kind of like that fine line of like compassion and accountability, and making sure that they can sustain outside of shelter.
Okay, I'm just going to keep going down the list here. For Pillars Housing, do we rent to individuals who are registered sex offenders or felons?
Yes. It all depends on when it comes to sex offenders. Again, we follow the same guidelines as anywhere else. If there's special bulletin that's going to limit, we do have a single room occupancy house that can sustain that. And then when it comes to criminal backgrounds, we're really open to that conversation about, what is it, how far back is it? But yeah, various backgrounds we still accept in our housing.
Awesome. Thank you, Paige. I lost my place here. Does Pillars work with anyone in the community regarding serving individuals who have recent evictions? I know that Pillars is open to serving individuals who have recent evictions. Are we aware of any other community partners that help with that?
It kind of depends on the landlord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The encouragement that I usually give if they do have an eviction is to take that Rent Smart class, which is done by the UW Extension. And after taking that class, they get a certification. They can do it online. But in our community, the landlords tend to really look at that class and see that a client is taking responsibility for that eviction and doing what they need to do to overcome that barrier. And they tend to give them more of a consideration for that apartment. With our diversion and prevention, if they're able to get into that program, those case managers do have landlords that they work with that they can advocate for those clients and to get them into an apartment as well when they do have those barriers. So when you have those high barriers, especially the evictions, bad credit, things like that, anything that that client can do on their own, like work with FISC or work with taking that certification through Rent Smart, will help them immensely in that process.
All right, thanks, Kim. And that brings us to time. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today and all the great questions. If we didn't get to your questions, we'll feel free to reach out. We can try to follow up on those, reach out to anybody that was on the call today. I want to thank all of our presenters and give a quick nod to marking your calendars for our report to the community on March 30th. So we'll be sending out more information about that in a couple days here for registration. But again, that's going to be March 30th, our report to the community from 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. So keep an eye out for that information and let us know if you have additional questions. I'll stay on for just a couple minutes, but for everybody else, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.